If you read translations of the Ramayana, you will always see that Hanuman stood on top of a mountain in southern India and leapt, and he jumped by the power of his legs because he was the mighty Hanuman, and he jumped to to Lanka. And Maharishi at one point said, no, 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 that's completely wrong. He practiced Sanyama. And if you look, you'll find it. So we all looked in the Ramayana, looked at the Sanskrit expressions, and in fact found that when you look at the descriptions of Hanuman making his so-called leap, you find that they're very beautiful descriptions of Sanyama, the practice of Sanyama. I'll give you a couple of them. Well, the Vedic thing is, as we know, Prakritim swam avashtabhya visrajami punah punaha, from the Bhagavad Gita, curving back on my own self, I create again and again. And this is how we create Sanyama. We go back on the self, and then we fulfill desires, any desires. And Vasishtha himself said to the wish-yielding cow, Kamaduk, create from yoga, create from the state of yoga, not from practicing asanas, but from the state of yoga. That's where you create from. So the first one of these is we find Hanuman sitting quietly alone, and all of the different Vanara are deciding how to go look for Sita, and Hanuman sitting off by himself. And they always depict him as just kind of sitting there, spacing out, I suppose. But if you look at the expression, the description, you can see in the Sanskrit, maybe you can't read the Sanskrit, but that red part is ekantam ashritya. Ekantam means solitary, singularity, and ashritya means taking recourse to. And what it means very clearly is Hanuman was sitting there taking recourse to that field of singularity, which we all do before practicing, TM City program. We practice our TM, we take recourse to that field of consciousness, and then we embark on our city practice. And it's clearly that's what Hanuman was doing. And he described his practice later. And Sita asked, how did you get here? How did you get to this island? And the first part of his expression was Atmaviryam Samastaya. Samastaya means basically establishing myself in evenness. That's the way Maharishi described it with respect to the Ritu chart. And Atmavirya, everyone sees Atma there, taking recourse to myself, taking recourse to the dynamism of my own self. He says, then I performed it. And the word he uses, the last word on the first line, is pluta. It's a very interesting word. The Sanskrit root is plu, P-L-U. It's a verbal root. Everything comes from verbal roots in Sanskrit. And this root has three meanings. One meaning is to hop, one meaning is to hover, and another meaning is to fly through the air. And I think we've all practically heard, or many of us have heard, there's a quote that has gone around from the, what's the name of the Yoga Tattva Upanishad, where he describes the three stages of yogic flying. And the three stages of yogic flying starts with hopping, then hovering, then flying through the air at will. And this word that is always described as leaping or hopping by translators actually means hovering and also flying through the air. And so it's very clearly there. You just have to take it on the right level. And in this next verse, which is just a description of Hanuman going through the air, what happens is he goes through the air and he confronts different obstacles. A big mountain rises up in the ocean and says, you can't go any farther. And Hanuman, deals with it, speaks with the mountain, talks to the mountain, and then moves forward. And then another great sea monster rises up and tries to devour him. And he makes himself minute and goes through the back of her throat or something like that. And if you think about it, if you leap through the air, you can't deal with something, talk to something, change your course, change your direction, and then keep going. You leap, then you land. But if you're flying, of course, you can do all those things. And there's an expression in the Sanskrit Jagama Akasham Avishya, that comes right after he deals with each of the obstacles. It's 3 times in the text, in the Sanskrit text. And what this expression means, curving back onto Akasha. And Akasha has 2 senses. One is space, but another sense is Chid Akasha. And Chid Akasha is consciousness. And so Akasha, Akasham Avishya means coming back, entering into Chid Akasha is what it means absolutely literally. Jagama means he departed, he left, he went off. So he dealt with the obstacle. And then according to this expression, once the obstacle was taken care of, the mountain and the sea creature, then he went back onto himself and continued on the path. And then he arrived in Lanka. And this was, you know, and Maharishi had asked for this, and this is very clear expressions of Sanyaman that remind. I once, a number of years ago, gave a sort of a lengthened version of this. I basically gave a presentation to Maharishi about an hour and a half long, where I went through all of the different stuff in the Ramayana, and he liked it very much. He, you know, so I feel like it has had his approval. But he felt very, very good and comfortable about everything. And he made only one comment, which I love to mention. He said, don't say the Ramayana says this or the Ramayana says that, because that takes away the aparashaya value of it. He said, better to say the Ramayana reveals and the Ramayana displays. And you can see the difference. The Ramayana is eternal consciousness. It's a collection of all the laws of nature that themselves make up the reality of Brahman. All of the different expressions are the expressions that put together are the story of Ram, the story of Brahman, every aspect of the story of Brahman. So you wouldn't say that it says this or it says that. You would say that it reveals it. This is there. This is in the Ramayana, and we can access it.